Now, I have two people who've got quite an incredible story to tell. Lily and Pete are joining me now. Hi, guys.
Hello.
Hello, how you doing?
Yeah, really good. You both look so brown. But, you know, this could be perhaps your style of life. Might have something to do with it.
Be the dirt.
Yeah, it could be the dirt.
For a bit, yeah.
I wasn't going to say anything. No, I'm joking. Now, you're here in Bristol to promote your film called We
the Uncivilised, the life story, yeah.
The life story, which, well, I'll let you explain what it was about and why it started, if that's okay, Lily. You go.
Yeah, well, it started about, 3.5 years ago. We were thinking about starting a family. We were living in a rental house, working to make the ends meet. Finding that we didn't have much time and that we were constantly having to compromise our values and our ethics in order to get by. So we made a decision to move out of our house and into a truck, do it up ourselves, bought a truck on eBay with 2 months rent money.
Early one morning.
Pete's a bit mean on the buy button on eBay, aren't you? So, so we got it, and
my hunter instinct.
Yeah. So you literally just bought a van on eBay,
Yeah.
and at what point? How pregnant were you at this point?
So this was before I got pregnant. Yeah. So
okay.
this was before. So this was just before we got married, actually.
Yeah.
So it was in the summer that we got married. So we actually got married and then moved into that. That was the beginning. That was our marital home. And then I got pregnant, what was it, a year later?
A year later, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
so we'd been on the road for a year when I got pregnant, yeah.
Okay, great. So you basically decided that, you know, living in the civilised world with all the, you know, I mean, it's so hard these days, isn't it? You know, with the culture of consumption, people being, you know, so materialistic. People perhaps thinking about what's going to happen in the future with famines, and you know, there's just it's kind of like so much to get into, and you're kind of hoping to find a sustainable way to live. Is that right? And have you been able to do that? Because this is the story. So I'm just trying to think where to start.
Okay.
Again, is that like you made this film, which is explaining your story from the last 2.5 years, from start to beginning. Now, if just maybe start where you began, when you started filming.
Well, what we did initially was we were just really, we lived on the edge. We'd started to live in our truck. We'd started to experience a sense of separation actually from the mainstream. As soon as we moved into a truck, we fell into a different community of people dwelling on the edge. Sometimes it was a beautiful space, sometimes it was fraught with trauma and sadness, because there's lots of reasons why people end up living that way. Some choose and some it's kind of the last place. So it's really important to acknowledge that, and we had the choice to go into that space. So it was very empowered for us to be there. But as we were in this environment, we were far closer to nature. We were living in the wild parks just outside of Brighton, moving around, going into the forest, into the woods, like just dipping in and getting more of nature. Okay,
so you were originally from Brighton, so you just sort of, literally just went out into the surrounding areas.
We were living in Brighton at the time. Lily's from London, I'm from up north originally, but we both travelled around and had quite full lives working. And essentially it was this sense of like feeling fulfilled, feeling like soulfully nourished by a simpler life. You know, our needs were far less. Like, we didn't have a shower. We weren't. You know, it was. But the experience was a sense of freedom.
Okay, so living in this van, did you have electricity?
We had like a 12-volt solar system.
Right. Okay. So which would power what?
That would just power
for anyone who doesn't know.
Our lights, really.
So you had
a
lights.
Laptop.
Yeah.
You know,
okay.
Essentially, that would be it.
Okay. So you converted this van into what? Having beds, a living area. How big was it?
It was.
Well, Pete's 6'8", nearly 6'9".
Yeah, I know. I'm having trouble.
So
we had a bed big enough for him and me.
It wasn't massively luxurious, but we made things so they slid out and you could push things back.
Sure.
And it was all made out of reclaimed wood, anything that I could find, old floorboards, recycled, sanded. So just, you know, basically creating a home, which was a beautiful experience. rented and not being able to bang a nail into the wall without threat of the landlord trying to charge you £50 to fill it in. And the madness of that, and so it was layer after layer, the freedom, the being closer to nature, and then out of that it's kind of like, whoa, actually that world that we stepped away from is quite violent. You know, it's doing something to us, and quite it's encroaching upon us in quite a strong and powerful way. And actually, when you have the privilege to step away from that of choice, then you can actually feel that. Yeah, sure.
So you'd been living in an environment where you weren't totally sort of out in the middle of nowhere, but perhaps starting to feel out of society and alone, maybe. So was this the point you thought of perhaps searching for how other people were living in similar situations, or what inspired the trip?
Yeah, I think it was really about this kind of, we were looking at civilization and just seeing that story of separation, and wondering whether we've called the film We the Uncivilised, and the project's called A Life Story, and the project's called We the Uncivilised. And so we were looking how like an uncivilised space could be a space that brings us back into connection and relationship, and brings us into a place where we feel like we're at home again. So at home in our hearts, at home in just that feeling of like, I belong here.
And what was it that you were lacking? Was it to do with people and that social side?
No, it was more to do with the whole situation. So it was like we were having to constantly engage with things that didn't feel aligned with how we were feeling. And the friendships, you know, we've still got our friends, and some of our friends think we're totally bonkers, and some of our friends live like we do, and there's a real cross-section, and obviously our families are very conventional. But it was just about how can we find a way of living our life with integrity, and that feels like we're living by our values. And so with that came new relationships with people, communities, new relationships the way that we were living, relationships with nature and the world around us, and then also asking questions about ourselves, like who are we? If we've left our job, if we've done all of that and we've stepped outside of it, then who am I now in that space?
Yeah, well, I really want to talk to you more about